on this week's Outside Looking In. While several businessmen are expressing optimism on the second package of tax reforms, Gunter Taws, president of the European Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, warns the provision to remove incentives for companies could spook potential investors. Several analysts, businessmen, and other stakeholders have been expressing their position on the second tax reform package, with the measure up for deliberations in Congress. For Gunter Taws, president of the European Chamber of Commerce Philippines, the removal of fiscal incentives and fees would send a wrong signal to existing investors. Under the proposed bill, current tax incentives would be removed after a maximum of 5 years.
A lot of companies came in here because of the incentives, and if you cut them, it'll certainly send the wrong signals to not only these companies but to further investments in the country.
However, Paula Alvarez, spokesperson of the Finance Department, explains the government is not removing these incentives completely.
Just to clarify their fears, number one, we will not be removing these incentives completely. What we want to do is to rationalize these incentives based on 4 principles, which are performance-based, time-bound, targeted, and transparent. So, of course, what we want to happen is for performance-based, what we want to give are incentives that would actually target job creation, export sales, research and development, and countryside development, among others. So for time-bound, we're still considering the 5-year per registered activity, but I think there have been communications for some concerned investors if we could do something about this time preference. As for targeted, what we want are those industries which have strong spillover effects to the economy that we would be giving incentives. So, and transparent, what we want is for the recipients to of the amounts received from the incentives to report it to the government and the public.
For Taws, incentives of firms should last for a longer period, but Alvarez thinks otherwise.
15 years, in my opinion, yes, would be competitive, and that's a general stand we've all taken throughout the last couple of months.
As compared to now that we give perpetual incentives, which we think is unfair, what we want to have is a more targeted and performance-based incentive. So that's why we wanted to create the new investment board.
Meanwhile, Taws is also not too excited over the proposal to lower the income tax rate from 30% to 25%. He claims the slash in income tax rate would not make up for the lost incentives, adding, even at 25%, the Philippines still has one of the highest income tax rates in Asia.
25% is neither here nor there in the context of ASEAN, because we're still, even if we cut it down to 25%, we're still the highest together with Indonesia. It's from a purely collection point of view. The moment you start lowering the income tax, I think people would be more prepared to pay rather than to evade, because there's so much effort to evade tax payments that it's not worth it if the rates are in the right height. So in my opinion, about 20% would probably be something we would like to see.
Though Alvarez asserts that is the eventual target of the government.
We actually want to reduce the corporate income tax from 30% to eventually 20%, because what we want to do is to benefit the small and medium enterprises.
Congress is set to tackle the second package of the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program when session resumes on May 15th. Gunter Taws will join us again next week for more insights on Outside Looking In. And we have